Hello and welcome to Mad Dog Hobby, just a guy enjoying the hobby the only way I know how. Rough. And today I'm putting together the Sanctifiers kill team quick and dirty. I'm racing against the inevitable Nerf hammer here because nothing stays broken like a new release from GW. Blood and Zeal was rumoured to bring us Grey Knights versus Khorne, but instead of demons smiting psychers, we got something no one saw coming: the Sanctifiers, an ecclesiarchy-aligned kill team enforcing the Imperial Creed with flamers, relics, and religious fervour. And honestly, I couldn't be happier. A team of preachers and zealots storming a Khorne-corrupted battlefield. Where, if not kill team? Count me in. I do flick through the instructions to make sure I can build every specialist without locking myself out of others like with the Inquisition, and it looks like I can. Excellent. And GW's new packaging, by the way, is like unboxing the Emperor's own flatback from IKEA, sprues nestled like sacred relics. I just wish they still included the old posters though for that ever important hobby room decor. I really like the models in this kill team, especially that GW are drawing inspiration from the old 54mm Inquisitor game. My only criticism is that these poses say Sunday procession more than battlefield aggression. They are supposed to be fighting with faith and fury, not leading mass. With every model built, this does give me a legal team to play, but I want to add 4 extra preachers to complete the roster. The Sanctifiers set does include an extra 4 chainswords and 2 extra hand flamers. I have an old box of Empire Flagellants in my pile of opportunity, which will be the perfect base for the preachers. I substitute the 2 missing hand flamers with a bolt and las pistol from the Krieg kit. The preachers can only take hand flamers, so I'm sure the WYSIWYG police can chill their beans. I think some basic hand swaps will do the job nicely, so I measure up some parts I want to trim and start clipping away the excess. This arm carrying the flail has this shackle thing which will be perfect to hide that the muscles don't line up naturally, so cut away the hand easily to make room for the new flame pistol hand. All I need to do now is remove the extra bit of robe around the flame pistol hand. I do this by first cutting away the large bits until I have roughly the shape of the hand, and then use the back of my knife to smooth the area out until it fits nicely with the arm. I do go back and forth with this process before gluing it into place. The chainsword arm was a bit more tricky because I can't easily remove the robe from the arm, so instead of cutting away the hand, I cut about half the length down from the flagellant's arm and just a bit off the Sanctifier's arm to remove the joint point, then smoothing the area down with the back of my knife. I repeated this process of cutting and smoothing until I had something I was happy with. I'm taking a little more care than usual because I want to get this team out as soon as possible, and I don't want to have to spend time fixing mistakes with green stuff. I'm happy with the result of this first one, but the chainsword arm does seem a little bigger than the pistol arm. It must really be his swinging arm, right lads? The last 3 were much simpler. It was just literally cutting off hand or arm and replacing it with a new part, which took very little effort to get right. And the end result is these guys here, and I've got to say I'm very happy with them. I put a couple of official Sanctifiers on either end so you can get a sense of the size difference. These guys scale pretty well. The official preacher stands just a little taller, but once they're painted and on the table, no one will care or notice. Next to my preachers, the official Sanctifiers look so serious. My ones are much more wacky than the new ones. Unfortunately, I think that GW are losing their wacky side with the new sculpts, at least for agents, and it's such a shame because I think mine look better in a way. I kind of want to convert the rest of them now, but no time. It's time for paint. My approach? Speed. Get a functional team on the table that still looks cool. These days I like to work up from brown because all the little pouches, wristbands, ropes and all the other little things that I forget to paint are already pretty much done, well, after a thick wash. I mix up roughly 50-50 of Rhinox hide and mahogany brown from AK. From this mix I get a really nice earthy tone which I apply to the model with 2 coats for even coverage. To finish off the base coat stage, I give the model a dry brush of Scrag Brown, which sets me up nicely for a Blanchitsu style, probably. First up on the painting table is the Persecutor. I want to tackle the robes first because I want to do a bit of dry brushing, and dry brushing can be pretty messy, so best to get it done first. I start by base coating the lower robes with 2 coats of Steel Legion Drab, then the upper robes with Ushati Bone. I try building up slowly with lots of thin coats because Ushati Bone is quite transparent, but This is probably a little too thin. Once this is dry, I hit the robes with a wash of 50/50 Garagax Sewer and Larmium Medium. I've tried painting with oils before and they do bring good results, however I find them a bit frustrating to work with because sometimes I seem to strip away the bottom layer of paint when removing the oil with white spirit, even though I've applied varnish. I want to find something with a similar finish to oils but using acrylics, and that's what I'm trying to do here. The Garagax Sewer does have a green tint to it, so it's already a little different to the effect that I get with oils. Maybe I should have just used Agrax's shade instead, but I'm interested to see where it goes. I want to bring the colour back up, starting on the lower robe. I give the model a dry brush of Steel Legion Drab. I'm using a dry palette and a moist dry brush for this because I find a wet palette leaves the paint a little too thin when dry brushing. Initially, I work the brush down on some of the more pronounced edges to make sure I've not got too much paint on the brush. When I'm confident with the amount of paint, I work in a circular motion to slowly buff the colour back up. At this point, I like the result, so I move on to the Ushati bone for the upper robe. I put the Ushati bone on the palette, get a good amount on my brush, and straight away, something's different. The paint seems too watery and it's finishing streaky on the model, so I dry my brush off a bit more and try again. Now the paint seems a little too dry and it's looking chalky on the model. Don't panic and trust the process. Carry on with a smaller brush for those harder to reach areas, and shit. It looks as dusty and dry as a Necron Tomb World. It's fine. Neaten it up with some highlights of Screaming Skull. Still looks the same. Break back out the Garagax Sewer and apply some shadows straight out the bottle. Crack back open the Ushati bone straight out of the bottle. Shit. Far from perfect, but it's good enough for tabletop. To finish the stage, I apply some highlights of Baneblade Brown to the lower half of the robe, and this is how it's looking so far. I think I can do better next time, but let's complete this Mother Persecutor first. I don't know how to paint skin, so I throw on 2 coats of Cadian Flesh Tone followed by a wash of Reikland Flesh Shade and highlight back up with Cadian Flesh Tone. I need to get moving on these minis if I'm going to keep to my release schedule, and well, who am I kidding? I'll never keep to the release schedule and the Yushu gods will surely punish me, but maybe this will save some time. For the black on the Eviscerator, I apply black to the panels, but make sure not to go all the way to the edge and cover up all the brown undercoat. Leaving the brown on the edges will give an old and used look to the weapon, plus the brown acts as a kind of highlight, because who likes highlighting anyway, really? Next, I apply lead belcher to all the teeth on the Eviscerator and all the other bits and bobs on the weapon that seem appropriate. I overbrush the Imperium symbol, leaving some of the brown in the recesses, and then finally picking out all the bits of metal detail on the mini, like the pin on the chest, wristband, belt buckle and such. To finish the base coats of the metallics, I apply Balthazar Gold to the flamer parts of the Eviscerator. Once this is dry, I hit all the extra bits that still have the brown base layer with a heavy wash of rattling grime, such as the underrobes, ropes, belt and such, and then all over the silver and gold parts I've just painted. To finish off with the washes, I hit the pipes and boots with Black Templar. Once dry, I use Oro Gold on the gold parts, which admittedly is an airbrush paint, but I bought it by mistake and I'm gonna use it, and to be fair, it doesn't look half bad. Then I switch to a tiny dry brush using Stormhost Silver to hit all the parts of the weapon, including the black and gold parts, as well as all the little silver bits on the model. Then going back with the normal brush to pick out all the edges to give it an old, overused, underloved look. To finish the model, I paint the hair Scrag Brown, wash it with Norn Oil, and highlights back up with Scrag Brown and Ushati Bone. With this technique, I painted all the Preacher-looking operatives with different colours, and here they all are in their glory. With the first two, as we know, lighter colours produced a very dusty look. I'm trying to paint this team quick and dirty, but I'm thinking they're a little too dirty, if there's such a thing, right lads? The next two I think are the right level of dirty, but don't have that grim dark feel like what I get with oils. I painted the red with Corn Red with a diluted wash of Garagax Sewer, dry brushed back up with Corn Red and highlighted with a mix of Corn Red and Tuscaur Fur. The beige parts using Steel Legion Drab, washed with Garagax Sewer, dry brushed back up and highlighted with Ushati Bone. I did manage to turn this poor bloke's face into a root vegetable, painted it 4 times, each one worse. Now he's officially Spud the Preacher. The purity seals are a base of Screamer Pink, a wash of Norn Oil and a highlight of Pink Horror. The parchment was Ushati Bone washed with Agrax and highlighted with Screaming Skull. Same for the bone, but with Skeleton Horde instead of Agrax. The banner and backpack of Holy Hand Grenades were painted pretty much using the same colours as the Eviscerator. The next suit, I'm starting to get a little better with the skin and faces. Not perfect, but not Spud the Zealot like before. The colours on the lower robes were the same as the Persecutor, but the upper robes were Scrag Brown, Garagax Sewer, and a little bit of Uriel yellow mixed in with the Scrag Brown for a highlight. The grey hair was Eshin Grey washed with Nuln Oil, and I could push it a little further with another highlight of lighter grey, but I want to move on to the other models, so perhaps I'll go back later and do it then. I'm pretty happy with these two, and I thought I was starting to get into the swing of things. But then I painted these two. I washed these two with Agrax instead of Garagax because I thought I found Agrax a little easier to control. I tried to aim it solely in the recesses and try and prevent the dusty dry brush look and just layer back up with Bone White from Vallejo because I find it a bit less chalky and wow, they look terrible. Clumpy, dirty and clean at the same time. I should really learn how to glaze, I think, because this shit can't go on like this. I think I prefer the dustiness of the dry brush to this, but for now let's get back on the horse and finish it. For all the lads and ladies in black leather and robes, I want to try and create a weathered, slightly bleached by the sun kind of look, so I don't want to use a traditional black. Instead, I mix Rhinox hide and night blue from Vallejo together, which looks dark grey on the palette, but once it dries on the model it does look black, so nice. Let's focus on Assassin's Creed here because I will paint all other models using the same techniques and colours as before. When I applied the black, I was careful not to paint over all the leather straps, which still have the base coat technique thingy I'm using. This time I'm going to hit the entire model except for the shoulder plate with Rattling Grime. To highlight back up, I hit the model with the same 50-50 mix of Rhinox hide and night blue. Then I mix in some Dawnstone grey to give me the highlight colour, which I use sparingly on the muscles and edges of the knee and handguards and the hood and such. I then dot some pure Dawnstone just at some of the highest points to complete the highlight stage. Moving on to the missionaries, the new thing to paint here is the Brazier of Holy Fire, which I sprayed white after undercoating the model in black to make it easier to paint, but the big thing here to note is the Rattling Grime undiluted. I used this instead of thinned Garagax on the entire model apart from the wood, and I think I just struck oil, baby. This is definitely the kind of look I'm going for. As for the plasma, I just undercoated white, then washed with Talisar blue contrast, and done. But going back to the fire, I first applied Bad Moon yellow contrast and then apply Fire Dragon bright. I try to add the orange to the inside parts of the flame to keep the yellow highlight in the hottest places of the fire. I then highlight the edges of the orange with corn red, trying to keep the orange in the middle of the flame. To blend it all together, I washed all parts, including the yellow, with Majos purple, finally adding a few spots of white around the centre of the brazier. It looks about as natural as a stripper's teeth, but it's good enough. For the Salvationist mask, I undercoated white and then washed with a diluted Nihilac oxide, but in the end I washed it undiluted and highlighted back up with white. I then painted the symbol on the forehead with silver, washed with Rattling Grime, and dotted the eyes with Rattling Grime for it to pool in the sockets. Finally, I just neatened the hood up from the overspill of the oxide. For the Miraculist, I'm back to painting my old nemesis, white. I painted the skin, metals and such in the same way as previously shown, but I left the white undercoat untouched on the robes and just slathered the model in Agrax. I found the Agrax didn't stick so much to the undercoat compared with the acrylics, so I hope that's going to work in my favour because hopefully it won't stain the white too much. Please don't take too many coats. Surely this will finally solve all my issues, right? I tried to stipple instead of paint the white on, building up a bit of coverage and then glazing over it when dry. Where I got the consistency of the glaze right, I think it looks alright, yeah. Against my better instincts, I decided to paint the eyes because on the Miraculous, the eyes are well defined, or so I thought, so I'm feeling brave. I simply undercoat with white and then drop some Talisar blue onto them to give a sense of her holy power, cleaning up any mistakes with Katashan flesh tone, so not so adventurous in the end, but I'm reasonably happy with the result. To finish the model, I add some blood for the blood guard where the Stigmata purity seal thingies impale the hands. For the fur on the Confessor, I painted it bone white and threw a watered down Nuln oil over the top. I then darkened some of the edges further with Rattling Grime, my new favourite paint, before adding some Gore Gunter fur. Finally, I highlighted back up with some bone white. For the bases, I apply a thick layer of thick mud from Vallejo, and to tie the bases in with the model, I use the same technique as I used for the undercoating, 50-50 mix of Rhinox hide and mahogany brown, but this time washed with Agrax and then dry brushed with Scrag brown. Any stones were painted with Dawnstone and washed with Agrax. I make sure to add some of these colours to the bottom of the model's robes to tie them in further to the environment. To finish off, I add some grass tufts to make it look like they're fighting on an alien world, perhaps quelling a Genestealer cult uprising, and this is the final result. This was fast and a little chaotic, but I learned a lot. I learned why no one on YouTube makes painting videos on such a varied kill team, but I also learned that quick conversions can still feel thematic. Painting under time pressure, less forgiving, but a great way to practice. Even small improvements feel great, and next time I'll keep refining skin tones and glazing techniques. I think the real turning point for me was using Rattling Rime undiluted to wash over the minis. This stuff brings the closest look to oils without using oils I've found. Sanctifiers built, based and absolutely ready to purge. Are they perfect? Not even close. But, I did it, and I can't wait to throw them into the meat grinder. If you like weird conversions, slapdash painting, and chaotic hobby projects, hit like and subscribe. More Kill Team Mad Dog hobby projects coming soon. Ciao.